All right. This is my son, James. He is our oldest, and at age 2.5, James had open heart surgery. It was pretty traumatic. It was a very intense time in our life. And during that time that he was at the hospital, his very favorite grandfather got him his very favorite toy ever. And this is it. It was a tractor. It was a big, heavy-duty metal tractor. And he loved this toy. And he had it for about 2 years. And he played with it all the time. His brother, his sister, everybody who came over actually rode on this toy, and it was his very favorite thing. Not only was it the best toy he'd ever gotten, but it had a real sentimental value. So it was really important in our family. But unfortunately, at the time, I was driving a big white Suburban, and every time I backed out of my driveway, I would check to see what was behind me. And unfortunately, one time I didn't check, and I destroyed the tractor. I have to say, I was mortified. I couldn't believe that I didn't check that one time. And it was small enough that I couldn't see it beneath when I looked in the rearview mirror to back out of my driveway. At the time, if I'd only known what I know now, I could have saved myself a little bit of heartache, and we could have saved the toy. So the answer to that problem is parking. So we have two options when we're parking. The first one that we almost always do is we head into a parking spot. And this is called heading in or forward parking. And this is what it looks like. So you can see that the car is in a parking lot, and as it pulls into that parking spot, it actually has to cross over the lines. And this is a geometry, physics things, I'm not really sure. But the idea is that the car has to cross the lines as it heads into the parking spot. So, why do we park head in? Well, it's traditional. When you first learned to drive, this is what you did. You parked head into a parking spot. It was natural, it's just the way it is. You're in a parking lot, and you find a spot, and you pull right in. It's also easier, or at least most of us think that it's easier to head into a parking spot. And it's quicker. Nothing to check. You just pull in and you're there. You're done. But we shouldn't head into parking spots because of safety. And because when we're backing out of a controlled space to an uncontrolled space, and there are lots more blind spots. So if you look at your car, when you're sitting in your car, you can tell that you have a much greater view when you're looking out the front of your windshield. But when you're looking in the back to back out of something, your view is diminished. It's much more difficult. The blind spots are bigger. So the alternative is to back in. It's also called tactical parking or fancy parking. And this is what it looks like. So, you barely pass the parking spot, and as you pass the parking spot, you head the opposite way, and then you back in. And if you look at this diagram, you can tell that the car doesn't have to cross the lines as it's backing into the parking spot. It's really pretty cool. And that all has to do with the geometry of the way cars work and how that is. So, why don't we back in? It's too hard. That's what everybody says. It's too hard. I can't do it. And if there's somebody behind me in the parking lot, I might actually have to make them wait. I don't want to do that. I just want to pull in and not worry about it. And, believe it or not, some people think that backing into a parking spot is arrogant. Who knew? But it's true. That's what they think. So, why should we back in? Well, it is actually easier. If you think about it, and this is one of these things that it's a visual thing, but if you think about it, a grocery cart is set up like a car. The front wheels of a grocery cart move the way you want to go, like a steering wheel moves our wheels, front wheels. The back wheels of a grocery cart are set, and they don't move. When you're at Costco or at the grocery store and the lane is tight, the row is tight, and you have to get around, sometimes you have to actually pick up your cart to pull around the corner to get down another aisle. So it's actually easier to back in. Not that when we're at the grocery store we back our carts around the corner, but the idea is similar, and that's how it works. And it's actually much, much safer to back into a parking spot. So, in 2008, the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration released a report about non-traffic backovers. And this is what they found. These are the statistics for all vehicles involved in non-traffic backovers. It's pretty staggering. That many people were killed and injured in non-traffic backovers. So the next thing that they did for the report is they took out commercial vehicles. And these are the statistics when you're left with passenger vehicles. It's staggering. It's huge. This is a big difference. Commercial vehicles don't have the problem that our regular passenger vehicles do. And so why is that they're the difference? First of all, commercial vehicles are required to have backup alarms. We work in construction, and all of our construction trucks and equipment, everything has a backup alarm. I'm sure most of you have heard it. And also companies have safety policies. In the last company I worked for, they required everybody who drove a company vehicle, everyone, whether it was a work truck or a passenger vehicle, they had to back into every parking space. So those are the two of the reasons why it's safer for commercial vehicles. So what about private vehicles? What's the solution? Well, they have come up with a few solutions. A lot of vehicles now have backup sensors. That was one of the first things, so that they would alert a driver that there was something behind the vehicle when they're backing up. They also have, a lot of vehicles have backup cameras now, and that's a good solution as well. And the last thing is safety practices. So we had missionaries who were in our stake, and for the last several years, whenever the driver was backing out of any spot, the other missionary had to get out of the car and be a spotter. So that was a safety practice that kept the missionaries safe from backing out of all kinds of different parking spaces. They also tried very hard to pull into any space so that they didn't have to do the whole spotter thing with the other missionary. So, tips and tricks. Are you nervous? The idea is that you practice first. Think about it. What does it take to back into a parking spot? There is a website out there, which is a lot of fun, that gives us a few ideas about how to back in. And it might give you some ideas about how to approach backing in for yourself. It's called fancyparking.com, and it's kind of fun. So, this is the first diagram, and this is called the classic fancy parking. Pretty basic. You can see that the car pulls past the parking spot and then backs into the X. If this is a little bit boring and maybe a little bit too easy, you can step it up a little bit. This one is called spin the bottle. Now, the idea behind this one is that you go about 75 or 80 miles an hour, you hit the X, you turn your steering wheel, and you slide into that spot. Now, this is not for beginners, but this is an alternative. There's also the classic, was that a space? Generally, this happens when you're on the phone, you're driving through the parking lot, you pass it, and then you think, oh my gosh, there was a space there. You back up and you get right in. It's pretty easy. There's also the fancy parking light. For those who are new to fancy parking. Now, the idea behind this one is that you don't actually have to back in, but you end up in the same position as though you did. It's called the pull-through. You basically pull through where there's two spaces. So you end up so that you're head out when you go to leave. And this one is for the truly adventurous. This is the kind that not everybody will ever want to try, but it's out there just in case you needed an idea or something that you wanted to step it up a little bit more. So what do you do now? Are you going to do it? You have to try it. You have to think about what is really happening when you're backing out and try backing in and pulling out. I challenge you to just do it.